They say the soil remembers. It does more than remember. It collects. It compiles. It keeps a ledger in a language written in root and rock, in blood and bone. This is not a story about demons. It is a story about deed and default. It is the story of a good man who walked onto a property that had held his name in escrow since before his grandfather drew breath. Family, draw near. This is the Dread Codex. Our story begins not with a scream, but with a signature, one written in something darker than ink. My name is Samuel Thibodeaux. I am a deacon, a traiteur, a mender of spiritual wounds. But in the fall of 2017, I did not mend. I served papers. What happened was not an attack. It was a foreclosure. It began with a silence, not an absence of sound, but the presence of a listening. It came into my Louisiana home like a change in barometric pressure. My daughter Claire, 6 years old, with a laugh like scattered light, developed a fever that didn't break. It settled. Her skin grew cool and damp as a cellar stone. She'd lie still, eyes wide, and whisper to the empty corner, "The tall men are counting the rooms. They say we're almost in arrears." Doctors drew vials of blood, found nothing. I knew what it was. A lien being called in. Then the knock. A woman stood in the twilight drizzle. Lydia Mercer. Not crying. Empty. Reverend Miller said you'd understand, she breathed, her voice paper dry. He said, the field has audited the books. It's claiming what's owed. My marrow went cold. The field. In the oldest journals I'd inherited, those words were always circled, annotated with a single symbol, a closed eye over a furrow. Lydia's testimony was a ledger of loss. Her husband Eli was a third-generation farmer, fleeing a grief he couldn't name, a first son born still and silent in an Illinois winter. He moved them back to the ancestral Mercer land outside Prophet's Fall, a place the family had left a century prior. The farmhouse didn't sag. It crouched. The sky above it wasn't just big, it was indifferent. And the corn, it didn't rustle. It murmured. A low, rhythmic susurrus, like an abacus in a vault. The first night, Lydia felt the house exhale, a long, dusty sigh from the floorboards. Then from the root cellar, a single deep thump. Then another. A slow, patient percussion, matching no human heart. Eli changed. He'd spend hours in the north acre, kneeling, his hands buried to the wrists. "It's showing me the ledger," he'd say, his voice distant. All the interest compounded in flesh. He led them to Sallow's quarter. The corn here was the color of old teeth, of drained marrow. At its heart stood a lightning-blasted oak, its main branch twisted into a perfect agonized question mark. The earth beneath it was gray. Not dry, not dead. Gray, like the inside of a coffin lid. People waited there. Neighbors, but rendered in negative. Their faces elongated, their movements a synchronized, swaying drift. An ancient man with eyes like dry creek beds pressed a palm to Eli's sternum. "The Sallow Field acknowledges the return of principle," the old man intoned, his voice the sound of soil shifting in a hole. "Your sorrow is the agreed-upon collateral." Eli smiled. It was the most terrible thing Lydia had ever seen. That night, the dreams were delivered. Hannah, the eldest, dreamt of a family tree whose roots were nerves, whose branches were spines, and whose fruits were pulsing embryonic hearts. She woke screaming, and without waking fully, carved a single word into the solid oak of the kitchen table. Amortize. Eli returned from the field dusted in that same pale gray powder. When he stripped for bed, Lydia saw it, a sigil etched into the skin over his heart. It pulsed faintly, a sick subdermal glow like something seen through thick ice. Then Ruth, the middle child, began to sleepwalk. They'd find her at dawn in the middle of the gray quarter, standing perfectly still, her small fists crammed with blighted husks. "It's teaching me the schedule," she'd murmur, eyes glazed. "I'll be such a good investment." The sounds escalated. A sub-bass hum from beneath the foundation, a frequency that vibrated the fillings in their teeth. Then a scrape, scrape, scrape from under the porch, not a knife but something larger, older. A scythe being sharpened on a planet's bone sound. Lydia called their priest. Father Malloy, a man of sturdy faith, blessed the house room by room. As he spoke the final Amen, every window in the house fogged from the inside. In the condensation, a single word was traced by an unseen, frigid finger on every pane. Liquidate. That night, Malloy attempted an exorcism. The moment he began the rite, the oil lamp died. Not went out. Died. In the absolute dark, a voice spoke. It didn't come from a mouth. It unfolded from the plaster, the timber, the very air. You trade in promises. We deal in principle. Your currency expires. Ours is the soil, and the soil is forever. Father Malloy was found at dawn on the porch swing, rigid, his eyes open and unseeing. In his Bible, every single reference to earth, ground, field, or clay was meticulously blacked out with a paste of ash and something dark and coppery. Clutched in his frozen hand was a note for me. It is the land's own accruing hunger. A covenant perverted into a consumption schedule. Find Samuel Thibodeaux. He knows how to break a contract written in blood loam. After Lydia left, the cold in my house crystallized. Claire's whispers became thin, reedy threads of sound. "Papa, the tall man is at the foot of the bed. He's unfolding the paperwork. He has your signature." I went to the cypress grove behind my home. I didn't call out. I presented my case to the deep old things that sleep below. The air grew thick, sweet with decay and bitter with lie. From a knot in the oldest tree, a voice seeped out, a sound of grinding stone layered over a child's forgotten sob. The little blossom. A late fee. We will collect her when the moon voids its light. A final, flourishing payment. It wasn't threatening my child. It was repossessing her. I drove to Illinois. The Mercer farm wasn't a home. It was a balance sheet made manifest. The air vibrated with a ledger's hum. The gray soil was spreading visibly, a slow, fungal foreclosure creeping over the healthy black earth. Eli Mercer sat in his parlor chair, a statue of a man. The sigil had metastasized, a gray, root-like network crawling up his neck and down his arm. His eyes were the flat, matte color of a stone plowshare. He turned his head toward me. I heard the sound, the crisp, dry snap of a stalk breaking. "The traitor," the presence within him said, its voice the low groan of continental plates settling a debt. "You have come to witness the settling of accounts." The principle was a firstborn's breath. "The interest is the family tree." Upstairs, the transformation was underway. Hannah's joints crackled with the sound of green wood hardening. Her skin had taken on a bark-like texture. Ruth's hair lay in drifts on the floor, replaced by a fine pale fuzz like corn silk. The youngest, Mercy, simply stared. In the depths of her pupils, if you looked closely, you could see the perfect repeating geometry of endless, silent rows. That night, Father Malloy, hollowed but determined, and I walked the property's boundary. We used salt from the Gulf and psalms of belonging. We declared the land under a different jurisdiction. The world breached contract. The corn didn't just grow, it multiplied, rising into a groaning, living vault wall. The rustling became a chilling corporate chant. The path dissolved. We were no longer on the land. We were in its portfolio. They manifested. The tall men, entities of shifting husk and stretched shadow, their faces blank parchment, their mouths stitched shut with lengths of razor-edged rye. And the Sallow, a titanic, slow-moving form of compacted gray soil, embedded with fragments of bone and the gnarled wood of the dead oak. Within its earthen mass, the distorted, pleading faces of Hannah and Ruth pressed outward, silent seeds screaming to be planted. Their assault wasn't violence. It was administrative erasure. They didn't show me torment. They made me feel the serene, logical peace of being written down to zero, of my love for Claire being liquidated, broken into constituent nutrients, and absorbed into the eternal silent balance of the soil. "Your God keeps books of spirit," the Sallow intoned, its voice the sound of a mountainside being entered into a ledger. "We keep the ledger of substance. We are the auditors of flesh. We simplify the complex asset. We return it to the eternal treasury of the deep, dark earth. It is not evil. It is settlement." Father Malloy collapsed, retching up clots of dark, loamy soil. I felt it happening. My memories of Claire, the smell of her hair after rain, the specific weight of her asleep in my arms, began to blur, to be filed away under obsolete data. I was being deleted from the bottom up. In that moment of dissolving, I did not pray for mercy. I filed an appeal. I dropped to my knees and drove my hands wrist-deep into the gray, hungry soil. It was cold and grasping. I did not shout. I stated, for the record, "My name is Samuel Renee Thibodeaux. My daughter's name is Claire Elizabeth Thibodeaux. Her favorite song is A la Claire Fontaine. You have no clause for her. You have no provision for this love." The chanting stopped. The field hesitated. My specific, detailed, named love was a solvent. It was an irregularity. A variable the hungry math of the covenant could not process. That moment of institutional confusion was the opening Papa Remy needed. He did not arrive. He was enforced. He was the deep earth verdict, older than law, impartial as gravity. The spirit of the unowned ground. Black cypress roots, thick as ancient pillars, violated the Illinois earth. They erupted with a sound of shattering stone, spearing through the tall men, reducing them to drifting chaff. They ensnared the Sallow in a crushing, relentless embrace. The land remembers 2 covenants, Samuel. Remy's voice was the sound of bedrock giving testimony. This thing has defaulted on the first. It consumes its own collateral. Nullify the instrument. We did not exorcise. We litigated to dissolution. We used water from the Mercer well, salinated with Lydia's tears and filings of cold wrought iron. We plowed a single deep furrow through the heart of the gray soil, with a plowshare quenched in the silently cried tears of a mother for a son she never held, the original unagreed upon debt. I did not chant. I read into the record. Every Mercer name from the original deed. Every firstborn, every stillborn, every child who had ever taken a breath on that land. I named them. I reclaimed them from the assets column. The Sallow's scream was the sound of ledgers burning, of contracts shredding themselves. The gray soil convulsed and began to reject its tenant. The stolen essences of the girls flowed back out of the earth, a reverse osmosis of spirit, seeking their rightful vessels upstairs. The final act was title transfer. I took the original, brittle deed to Sallow's quarter. As Remy's roots held the shuddering entity in a grip of final judgment, I read the legal description aloud, every metes and bounds. Then, with a pin I'd heated in the flame of a blessed candle and dipped in my own blood, a bloodline it did not own, I added a rider, a codicil in the margin. Be it hereby rescinded, all covenants, implied or explicit, not entered into with full knowledge and free will under the sun. All debts are declared void ab initio. All future claims based on this instrument are forever barred. The hunger is hereby evicted. I signed it. Samuel Thibodeaux, witness and notary. A silence fell. Not a quiet, but a vacuum of intent. It sucked the very purpose from the air. The Sallow imploded, not with a bang, but with the soft final thud of a heavy book being closed forever. It collapsed into a dense, cold, fist-sized lump of pure gray clay. Papa Remy's root tendril lifted it from the dirt. This goes to the archive, he murmured, his voice fading like a forgotten precedent. To a vault where the earth does not turn, where no seed is ever entered into the log. It will hunger forever with nothing to itemize. Dawn broke, not with a fanfare, but with the clean, quiet relief of a debt forgiven. The gray soil was just dirt. Eli wept on his porch steps, a man hollowed out by a loan he'd never meant to take, the scar on his chest pale and inert. His daughters slept the deep, dreamless sleep of those whose names are no longer on a manifest. When I crossed my own threshold back in Louisiana, Claire was at the kitchen table, coloring. The pervasive cold was gone. The air was just air. The tall man left, Papa, she said, not looking up from her drawing. He said your paperwork was in order. I held her. The victory was not warm. It was the cold, clean feel of a filed dismissal. A stay of execution, not a pardon. I learned that the truest terrors are not invaders. They are institutions. They are systems of consumption disguised as tradition, hunger dressed as heritage, and faith. Sometimes it isn't a shield. Sometimes it is the cease and desist order you serve with a voice that will not waver. Now, sometimes in the deep stillness of a winter night, or when I stand on a silent fallow field, I feel a faint, distant vibration through the soles of my feet, a phantom tremble. And I understand. In a lightless archive at the root of creation, a lump of audit-hungry clay dreams of a balanced book. And it has just had its first taste of a love that filed a counterclaim. This was the story of Samuel Thibodeaux and the foreclosure of the Sallow Field. It is not a ghost story. It is a litigation. The most profound evil does not seek to corrupt you. It seeks to enter you into its ledger, to amortize your soul across eternity as compounding interest on a spiritual debt you never co-signed. So listen closely. If you ever walk a field where the quiet feels less like peace and more like a held audit, if the rustling sounds like pages turning in a very old book, do not hesitate. Retain counsel. Run. Some places are not haunted by the dead. They are haunted by the perpetual, unappeasable shareholder. If you have a story buried in the silent archives of your past, send it to contact.thedreadcodex@gmail.com. We will see it entered into a different record. Until next time, may your debts be your own. May your harvest be exempt. May your name remain unwritten in the dark ledgers. Good night.